Hi everyone, I'm Chris. Welcome to another edition of the Alfa Nut. In this video I'm going to be talking about my 2022 Giulia Quadrifoglio, which I've owned for about 10 months now. I've covered about 12,000 miles in it and I've been using it as my daily driver. So I'll be giving you my honest opinion of what the car's like to live with, the things that I love about it, the things that I don't love about it, and also, you know, what it's like to drive, and importantly, the cost of owning one. You know you want to. So after drooling over videos of Quadrifoglios since 2018, my company car lease finally ran out at the end of 21, and seeing as COVID had completely destroyed my carefully planned early retirement, I decided that life was too short not to own a quad, and I nipped down to my local Alfa dealership, Vosper's in Exeter, to try and order a new car. Here we are. Hello. I'm very well, how are you? I'm very well. After talking it through with the sales executive Jenny, I was gutted to discover that almost all of the spec I wanted for my car, things like coloured stitching, Alcantara seats, carbon mirrors, yellow brake calipers, red leather cockpit panels, they'd all been discontinued for the 2022 models. Had I left it too late to order my dream car? Oh. So I was disappointed and I left, telling Jenny I would think about it, you know, consider my options. I went back to work and moped around for the rest of the day, not really knowing what to do. But the 4-leaf clover I've carried in my wallet since I was 25 must have kicked in, because a week later, Jenny called me to say that she'd discovered a Quadrifoglio on their stock list. Now this car had been ordered a few months earlier and it was a 2021 spec car, but the new 2022 facelifted model. Now that meant that all the deleted options that were no longer available on the price lists would be fitted to this car. Woohoo! Now if that wasn't awesome enough, it turned out that the car was actually finished in Misano blue, which was only my favourite colour. It also had red interior stitching, which is what I wanted as well. It had Alcantara, electrically adjustable and heated seats. It had the split folding rear seats, the new dark rear lights, it had a convenience pack, it had the Harman Kardon sound system, active cruise control, heated steering wheel. Well, it was great, the list went on. It was pretty much the happiest day I'd had in several years. In fact, it turned out that the only thing missing from my ideal spec Quadrifoglio were yellow brake calipers, as this car was fitted with red ones. So I've since heard that yellow calipers have got a bit of a tendency to fade quickly anyway, so I'm actually quite happy to have red ones, and I think personally that they look great anyway. The car duly arrived in mid-March of last year, and I was super excited because I've had some lovely cars in my time, but apart from my wife getting a few new company cars in the past, I had never ordered myself a brand new car before, let alone a 510 horsepower Italian super saloon. It felt like the gods were smiling when I went to collect the car because it was a beautiful, dry, sunny day and I was in heaven. So, what's it like to drive? Well, in dynamic mode, the gear change is quicker and the suspension stiffened and more power is available, although the torque is restricted in the first sort of 4 gears, presumably to avoid wheel spin. Engaging race mode switches off all driver aids and it provides the full 510 horsepower and 600 newton meters of torque. There's no restrictions in race mode, and the car proceeds to try and scare the out of you on anything but perfectly dry roads. Now, it's a lot of fun, but be warned, you need to stay frosty and on top of your game when you're in race mode, or things can go sideways very quickly, and I mean literally. I'm not going to discuss economy mode, as it's not a setting I've ever used. Google it if you want to know. Now, the car surprised me at first as it's so competent and friendly. You know, there's no other word for it. In restrained daily driving and the setting set to natural mode, the power is restricted to about 350 horsepower, and the car changes gear gently with a quite subdued exhaust note. I was a bit unhappy with how quiet it was, to be honest, compared to the earlier model I'd driven back in 2019. So I decided to buy an exhaust sound controller from Squadra Tuning in the Netherlands, which simply plugs into the OBD port, and bingo, instant control over the switchable exhaust valves using the trigger on the gear lever as the on-off switch. Awesome. The Quadrifoglio won Performance Car of the Year with several magazines for several years running, and once you drive one, it's pretty easy to see why. Okay, let's go. So one of the great things about the Quadrifoglio when you're doing a long distance journeys, partly the fuel consumption increases dramatically when you're on the motorway and you're doing longer journeys. And I'm getting probably somewhere in the region of about 34 to 35 miles per gallon on the motorway, which is great, which is way more than you get normally. Everyday sort of mileage combined is probably about 23, which unfortunately, if you use the performance of the car, which is quite hard not to do, that's what you get. If you're on the motorway, however, and you're cruising along at a steady sort of 75, I'm usually getting about 34 to 35 to the gallon, something like that, which is brilliant, much better. And one of the great things about the car when you're doing longer journeys is it's a very quiet car, which is welcome when you're doing long journeys and you're not pushing on. But the seats are fantastically comfortable. In fact, I think they might be the most comfortable seats of any car that I've ever owned. The next most comfortable seats that I can remember were in the Alfa Romeo GT, ironically. Those were great as well, but in my previous car, which was a BMW 530e, which was the hybrid, petrol electric, it had comfort seats, inverted commas, which for me were anything but, to be honest. They were big, squashy, white leather seats with sort of an infinitely adjustable mechanism. But after sort of 60 or 70 miles, I would start getting an achy back, and sometimes a numb rear end as well, which didn't help. So for me, they were, you know, pretty against the Trades Description Act, let's say, because they really weren't comfortable. These, however, are brilliant. I can do a journey of 300 miles without any backache or any fatigue and get out feeling as fresh as a daisy, which is brilliant. Some of the other great points of the Quadrifoglio that have been really obvious to me after having driven it through the winter is the modules that you used to have to specify are now mostly included in the standard package. So you get things like heated seats, as long as you specify the standard seats and not the carbon fibre backed ones, which if you do specify those, yes, they look brilliant, but they're not anywhere near as comfortable, in my opinion. You also lose the heated seat function, which for me is, you know, non-negotiable for a winter driver. But anyway, the Quadrifoglio, it gives you heated seats. You even get a heated steering wheel, which I've never had a car before that had a heated steering wheel. And you might think, oh, that's a gimmick, but it really isn't. When you're getting into a car and it's freezing, it's minus figures outside. You know, the things that you're touching in the car are the gear lever and the steering wheel. And if those are freezing as well, then it makes it, you know, the first 10 minutes of your journey slightly less pleasurable. So heated steering wheel, yeah, sign me up for that again. Perhaps a few of the things that do niggle about the infotainment system, because, you know, it has been slagged off quite a lot as being, you know, not up to the competition, but I disagree. You know, the screen is quite big enough. It's better in the dash, underneath the line of the dash, rather than like BMWs and Mercedes, it sticks up and it's there, it's right literally in your face. Some may say, yes, well, it's easier to look at that and then back at the road because it's nearer to your line of vision. Maybe. I prefer it to be below the level of the dash. It's more pleasing. It's just ergonomically better, in my opinion. But anyway, the screen's fine. The user interface is perfectly usable. I don't have any issues with the controller. The one thing that I do think could be improved are just a few little I don't know, things that I would prefer to be able to program myself, such as if you're using the sat nav and you're listening to music at the same time, if you want to concentrate on the sat nav and switch the music off, that's fiddly. And if you turn down the music, you then can't hear the sat nav. And if you switch off the music to listen just to the sat nav, if you touch the volume control either on the steering wheel or on the central console, then the radio or your MP3s burst back into life again, and you have to go through the process of getting your phone out of the charger cubby and switching off your streaming, your Spotify or whatever it is that you're using, or switch the radio off. And sometimes you can do that 2 times in a row and it's very annoying. Also very annoying, when you start the car up, it will always default to the last setting that you left your music on, which is fine. But if you get in the car, start it up and then switch the music off straight away, it waits for about 10 seconds and then switches it back on again. And you're like going, no, I don't want it on. Off, off, off. So that's a bit irritating. But, you know, it's first world problems, isn't it? Other detrimental things, well, it's incredible, but there really aren't very many. When Clarkson was saying that, how very Alfa Romeo, they put the door in the wrong place. He was referring to the pillar behind the driver's shoulder, and the A pillar, I believe it's called, is quite far forward, because the driver's and passengers' front doors are quite short. Now, I guess that they've probably done that because I think I might have taken a wrong turning. M42. Yes, we want the M42. I haven't taken a wrong turning, it's fine. I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm going. So, because the A pillar is quite far forward, it does restrict your rearward over the shoulder view. So if you're on the motorway like I am now and you're changing lanes, you're overtaking a slower moving car in front of you, what you would normally do, check the mirror, check the outside mirror, hit the indicator to overtake, and then personally, from it's indelibly imprinted on my mind from many years of motorcycling. They call it a lifesaver in motorcycling, but you always look over your shoulder before you pull out or change lane or direction in both directions. So that's something that I always do. I do it instinctively. I don't think about it before I move, change lanes. I will always look over my right shoulder. Unfortunately, in the Quadrifoglio, looking over your right shoulder means that you get a face full of A-pillar and you can't see anything that's behind it. So it's good to know that the Quadrifoglio has, I'm assuming that it uses the radar parking sensors to activate these, but you get the little orange triangle in the rear view mirror if somebody is coming up on the inside of you, and if you decide to indicate to overtake like that, you get 4 little beeps warning you that somebody is in your blind spot, either on the left or on the right. And that's really useful. Of course, one of the intrinsic problems of having a fast cult car like a Quadrifoglio is a lot of people will, who aren't very car savvy, will look at the car and they'll think, oh, that's nice, oh, it's a lovely colour, or that's a nice, it's a cool looking car, it's purposeful, it's got fat wheels and big arches and all that kind of stuff. Of course, some people who are car fans will know what the Quadrifoglio is, and they know how fast it is. They've seen films like Six Underground, and they appreciate that it's a bit of a fire-breathing saloon car. Unfortunately, some of those people, and they're not always young guys, wearing baseball caps in chavved-up Volkswagen Golfs. No offence if you've got a Volkswagen Golf. But sometimes those people who know what the car is will want to race you, basically. And even if you're not interested in racing, sometimes they'll drive up your rear end and they'll overtake you and then slow down to get you to overtake them again, and then they'll accelerate when you try and overtake them. I'm happy to announce that most of the time I'm very mature and I just allow them to carry on, basically. I just allow them to... somebody's doing it to me right now. How weird. He's in an Audi A4, sorry, an Audi A3 in white with black wheels, blacked out windows, and he's wearing a tracksuit. There he goes. There he is. Yes, mate, very good. Yeah, and he just drove up alongside me on the inside and was staring at me. So that's a great example, right on cue. Most of the time I'm very mature and I just let them get on with it, because I'm not really in that age bracket anymore where I have to prove that my car is faster than your car, etc. But sometimes if I'm in a larcenous mood and the roads are quiet, and I just see that the stereo just came on by itself. I didn't touch anything. So sometimes if I'm in that kind of a mood, I'll just put it into manual, drop it into dynamic, and just wipe the floor with them. Because you would, wouldn't you? I mean, you have to. You have to do it sometimes, because otherwise it's, I don't know, it's bad for your soul, or too much common sense, and too much restraint. Too much restraint and too much common sense can be bad for your, bad for your blood pressure. Oh, brilliant. So it's 8 degrees outside and sunny, and I'm now stuck behind a gritter lorry, and the whole of the road surface is absolutely swirling in salt. Really not what I want to be doing. I don't want to be driving my expensive Alfa Romeo sports car through a swirling sea of salt dust. Man, why don't we do what they do in Japan, for goodness sake? So let's talk about the cost of buying one. So I was fortunate to be able to get a pretty chunky £8,000 off the £73,000 list price of my Quadrifoglio. I used the Affinity car scheme. The Affinity scheme, which you can actually apply for if you're a member of the Alfa Romeo Owners Club. You need to have been a member for at least 6 months to be able to apply for that. I also put down a deposit of about the same amount again, and I used a 4-year PCP deal, which means that I can actually hand the car back with no penalties after 2 years, or if I want to keep the car for the full 4-year PCP lease time, I can actually buy the car at the end of the lease with a settlement price. And because of the way that Quadrifoglios have been holding their value, I think it's pretty likely that in 4 years' time I will be able to pay less in the settlement payment than the car is actually worth, which is nice. So with this arrangement, the quads costs around £870 per month. But PCP plans are normally available for cars up to 3 or 4 years old. So with the right used car and a reasonable deposit, you could quite conceivably find yourself driving a Quadrifoglio for less than £500 a month. Now, to put that into perspective, that is actually less than a Ford Kuga plug-in hybrid will cost you per month. Tricky decision. Anyway, in summary, the Quadrifoglio is quite a unique car in many ways, and it won't suit everybody, but to me that's part of the point of owning one. It's such a rare sight on the road, and you have to be pretty determined to own one, as everybody seems to want to tell you that an Audi this or a BMW that is better. Sorry everybody, but for me, they just aren't. If you love being surrounded by ego-flattering tech and the latest shiny bling, then fine. Go and buy a C63 or an M4. But if you prefer to drive a car that plugs directly into your emotions every time you climb into it, and it manages to make even the most modest driver feel like a hero when they're slicing effortlessly through a series of bends, all the while making a noise that sounds like a Ferrari being rogered by a superbike, then the Quadrifoglio is definitely one car you simply can't afford to miss. So, if you've enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button below and leave me a comment telling me what you think about the Quadrifoglio. If you think I'm full of you-know-what or you think I'm correct, let me know. Leave me a comment and I'll see you all in the next video. Cheers.